So good morning, everybody. Great to see that you're up and running after this long night. Probably you all attended already the keynote, so it's fine. I'm Ute John. For those who do not know me, I'm an independent consultant in the area of knowledge management. I'm also representing the German-speaking Association for Knowledge Management as a partner here in Semantics. So for the last 10 years, we have been supporting special sessions, and we did the Academia to Meets Business session, for example, in this year's conference. And now I'm sharing this small little track, not the track, but the session, which I find also very interesting because ESG is the topic of what we're talking about. So as an application domain for our technology, that seems to be interesting. Our first speaker is online. That's Ali Khalidi. He is a senior specialist manager working at Deloitte Risk Advisory in the Netherlands. He's leading the knowledge graph team at Deloitte, supporting their clients on use cases such as data lineage, knowledge enriched AI, and analytics. Ali is also senior research fellow working in learning and reasoning research group at Free University Amsterdam under the lead of Frank van Hamelen. Ali has got a PhD in agile knowledge engineering from University of Leipzig with Sören Auer. And his main interests are in the intersection of semantics and human interactions. And what he's going to present is actually the results of a master thesis that his colleague Sohail El Sabruti has performed in Deloitte for the Free University. So he could not join. So Ali, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Let me try to share my screen. Yes, I think, let me see if that works. Let me know if you can see the correct screen.
Yeah, we see it.
Yeah, it's okay, great. Yeah, good morning, everyone. So this is Ali, and as was mentioned, so this is the thesis, master thesis project of our thesis intern, Sohail Sabruti, and that was also supervised from the full side by Victor de Boer, who is also, I think, online in the call, as I saw. And the topic is knowledge graph-based immersive ESG data visualization using metaphoric representations. So a long title, but I will elaborate on that on the next slides. So since Sohail couldn't make it, so if you have any in-depth, detailed questions, I might refer you to him. So if I don't know the answers. Let's get started. As an outline, so I will start giving you a bit of background and the research question we are tackling in this work. Then talking about the related work or approach, the implementation and the evaluation. So the user study we conducted, and then I conclude and I will leave some time for a Q&A. So as I mentioned, so this work is a combination of 4 different areas. So I first want to define those areas and give you a bit of background. So for knowledge graphs, I guess you're all familiar with knowledge graphs. So to represent knowledge in a domain of interest, so we use it to provide meaningful context for data, in this case ESG data, and also to provide intuitive visualizations of connected data and metadata. And ESG, of course, is a hot topic these days. So to provide insights into organizations' environment, social and governance structures. So how we can measure companies' performance in sustainable practices. And there are lots of ESG regulations, law coming into effect. So to implement those mandatory ESG standards. For example, if you have heard of CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. And one issue we have within a ESG domain is the information overload and how we can make sense of that data. Another area we will address here is virtual reality. So a simulated experience that gives the user an immersive feel of a virtual world. So it's, if you look at the spectrum from the virtual world to real world, so it's the first instance in that spectrum. And it comes with broad range of use cases. So you can also see, for example, augmented reality as one step further, so to be more mixed with the real world. And we also use metaphoric visualizations to simplify complex ideas. So to basically interpret abstract ideas in a visual experience. So for example, you map an unfamiliar concept to a familiar concept. And there are different ways to define those mappings, distance-based, attribute-based, topological, or hybrid. So the main research question we were addressing in this work was, to which extent is a metaphoric based knowledge graph visualization implemented in a virtual reality environment is suitable for communication of ESG data insights. So again, we will address all those four areas in this work. And looking at the related work, of course, there are a lot of research being done in each area, but we were mainly interested in where those areas overlap. So, for example, when you look at the combination of knowledge graphs and virtual reality, there are already literature discussing using knowledge graphs in virtual reality for educational purposes. When you look at the combination of ESG and knowledge graphs, so that is also a new area. So one work was about ESG compliance prediction using knowledge graphs. If we look at the combination of metaphoric visualizations and virtual reality, there are a lot of work done in related to software engineering. So how to visualize software packages, for example, as a solar system in virtual reality, or some other kinds of metaphors to visualize different libraries and software architectures. And one other relevant work was the work we did a few years back on visualizing linked data as habitable cities. So we were defining some metaphors to define, for example, different types of buildings for different RDF classes. Then, depending on the number of instances, you can define how tall that building should be, and some roads to show the connections. And so to use the some features from knowledge graph and map it to some virtual objects. But what we see is, if we look at the combination, so we at least couldn't find any literature where we combine those four, and that's actually where our work comes into play. In our approach, so you see 5 different steps we followed. So we started to collect data on ESG. Then we built a knowledge graph. And then we defined the mappings, so those metaphoric mappings based on the knowledge graph. We then had an iterative process to build a POC, so the virtual reality environment based on the knowledge graph and the mappings. And then finally, we conducted a user study to evaluate the effectiveness and expressiveness of our POC. So I will walk you through different steps in my next slides. The first one was data collection. So we used data from Refinitiv Icon, so which has for companies, it has data on different components of ESG. So you see, for example, for environment, social, for governance. So you see different figures here. So, and then it's also comes with with the taxonomy. So you have the components, you have some pillars, then you have some categories, and it was also historic data. So we had it over, I think, 5 years, as you see here. So we exported data, and then based on that, we created the knowledge graph. So to model the relations between those ESG components, categories, pillars, and scores, and also adding the weights in there, because when you calculate the final score, you have to take into account also different weights of those factors. And to give you an example, so environment, for example, is a component, then you can look at the emission as a category. Then as a pillar is total CO2 emission, and then you will get a CS score, for example, 4.66 million in a certain year. So in this case, 2020. So we then started to populate that knowledge graph, and then at the same time, we were also working on creating the metaphoric mappings based on the knowledge graph. So, which means connecting those ESG components and categories to some 3D objects, which were implemented then later on by your virtual reality environment. So what you see here is an example of mapping table that we created. So if you look at one example row there, so you see emission score as a component, and then we have a metaphoric object, let's say, for example, a factory that you use. And then we have also some configurations for the mappings. What's represented here as a scoring attribute, so the amount of smoke coming out of that factory, so it can be then connected to the value of that emission score, or even to the weight of that. So you will see at the end something like the visualization on the left side. So if you have two different scores, so then the amount of smoke coming out from that factory, so that will differ as an indicator. And then, so in the POC phase, so we were trying different types of metaphors and different types of interaction models. So what you see on the right-hand side is like how to use the VR controller, so to interact with the environment, to expand some items, to compare some items, and how to show the results. And so this is the implementation. So where we used the Unity game engine, and we imported already some 3D objects into that. On the data side, so as I mentioned, we used Refinitiv, and then the CSV files we exported, so we converted it to graph, and then we use Neo4j Aura DB, so on the cloud, so to store that data, and then based on the mappings which were defined, so we render the environment, and then as you interact with the environment, then you query that graph database. So to give you an impression how this would look like, let me show you this quick video. So this is basically the environment where you use the controller to select the year and then select some companies. So this only shows three example companies. So for certain year, then yeah, you can select one or more companies, and then it will generate the environment, and then you can explore the environment. So you can just click on that, to expand some nodes, so you see different ESG dimensions here, so different scores, and also you see how they are connected with each other. So, and you see different metaphors, also different objects that you see refer to different ESG pillars and categories. And so you can interact, we can pick some categories and expand to see the lineage from there, or you can also compare some of them. Let's see. So you can, so this is another company, so you can also see the scores, different dimensions, and then you see here you can do a comparison between the different scores, and also you can do it also cross category. yeah, in this case, you see affordable and clean energy. So it's compared with clean water and supply. So you can also compare them. So yeah, this was just to give you an impression how the environment looks like. So and this was just an experiment. So the idea is the model should be generic, so we can change the metaphors. And this is the evaluation we did. So at the office, so we for the evaluation we had 10 participants which were already familiar with ESG framework and they had experience in data reporting analysis using visualizations. So we selected one participant each time, so explained the setup, the instructions, and we had a 10-minute VR warm-up to get them familiar with the controller, how the device works. And then in terms of tasks, so we had 3 different levels of tasks, simple, medium, complex, and 2 types of tasks, lineage and comparison. So lineage was, for example, simple task was to just try to look up a certain ESG score for a certain company, but it could be also it could be more complex, like what is the lowest score for certain category, in this company, and then compare it with another company. And we had then after that we had some post-experiment questions, so like the CSUQ, so the system usability questionnaire, or also to assess cognitive load, also to assess the metaphor expressiveness and effectiveness, and then also some open-ended questions. So to give you some insights on the results. So what you see on the left side is the result of the system usability questionnaire. So which was 19 questions in the scale of from 1 to 7, and you see the right part, the distribution in the interface quality scale. So that was the most focused and the least skewed out of the 4 levels. And it was showing that for the interface quality, the participants deviated less from the original, from the average compared to others. The right one shows the past mental effort questionnaire, so in a scale of 1 to 9. And then you see the levels of tasks and the 2 types of tasks, and what you can apparently see is the values are always skewed in each of the tasks. For the lineage type task, so the distribution became more and more focused, so indicating also less mental effort as people learn and get more familiar with the tool. And also in a similar way, so we looked also the accuracy across the 6 tasks. So there you can also see the learning curve. So for the simple questions, so accuracy is 100%, but then as you go, it becomes more difficult, so the accuracy drops, especially for the comparison tasks. And finally, also you looked at the assessments of the metaphor across the 2 criteria that you see, expressiveness and effectiveness, which was also received the above average. And we had some, also, as I mentioned, some open-ended questions. So here you see a few of them. We asked, actually, after the experiment, we asked those open-ended questions. For example, could you name any components of the tool that are particularly helpful or relevant to data visualization? Many of them indicated the lines, the linkage between them, the comparison functionality. And also we asked on the limitations, drawbacks of using this metaphor. And as you see, so there are some comments from the participants, for example, that want to compare quicker the multiple different values. There were also some comments, some also improvement point mentioned by the participants. So to conclude, so we were working on a novel application for 3D metaphoric data visualization by combining 4 domains, so ESG, virtual reality, metaphoric visualization, and knowledge graphs. So we proved the potential value of this by implementing a POC, and we conducted the user study, which shows decent promising results. And there are a lot to be done as future work. So first, we want to further enhance the metaphoric representations, also the user interactions, to scale up data and data domains, how we can navigate the crowded space, and also to switch to AR, so to enhance the user experience. So by using augmented reality, and so also different types of user interactions based on the feedback we received from the users. And yeah, I think that was it. So I'm more than happy if there are any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Now, what makes you think? Looks like it's an interesting gamification experiment with respect to our data. So
True, it's a pity that the Unify engine is going to be costly because they will ask you to pay depending on the use. But that was not, they were not aware that when they started the issues, I think.
So other questions here?
Maybe a question.
Yeah.
Ali, I'm Wouter from Triply. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Question about how do you see the actual usage in VR versus AR? Like what makes you decide to go either way? Also with like communicating the knowledge graph aspect.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think because initially the plan was to use AR for us, but I think we had some limitations in AR. First was the maturity of libraries. It's still, not as mature as VR. So that's why the student actually at the end looked into Unity and the VR part. But we do believe that AR actually will be more effective in terms of like not really isolating users from the environment, because we even in some cases during the experiments, some people got really nauseous when they were playing with that. So it's also, I think, in terms of usability, I think, and also the whole idea of augmented reality. So if people, for example, can use just their own, the table and put stuff on that. So it's, I think we believe it will have a more effective user interactions, but that's just, I think, wasn't the right time to do it. So that's why I think in future work we will explore that.
Yeah. Nice, thanks.
So Ali, who is the extended user group that you let's say address? Is it in-house or is it others?
Yeah, actually the idea is, of course, we have to do work to be in that level, but it was for our clients, and especially on the C level, people who can easily, without having any technical knowledge, so they can, for example, you go to CEO of a bank, and then he or she can easily, navigate through their ESG landscape, see what's happening there. So that was the ultimate user.
Okay. Any other questions here? No, it doesn't look like it. So thank you very much, Ali.
Yeah, thank you too.
Okay, and now we have switched the sequence. So instead of Hazard, now we first have Carlos here, because he has to hit the airport on time. So that's why he decided.
Thank you, Prasad.
So they basically just swapped, and I think that is fine. Let me briefly introduce Carlos. Carlos Arias, a senior environmental specialist with the International Finance Corporation, which is a member of the World Bank Group. So obviously he lives in Maryland and works in Washington, D.C. Carlos has more than 25 years of experience on creation of robust integrated management systems on environmental and social, occupational health, society, and risk management. He is a strategic thinker with a broad background in project management, data research, and both qualitative and quantitative analysis using multiple information sources. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining these sessions and on ESG. As you know, ESG is becoming a more and more hot topic, and there were other presentations these days, like the one given by Andreas and Prasad yesterday on the same topic. I don't think I need to go too much again on reinforcing the idea of what sustainability is important. So what we're going to discuss today is about who is IFC and what's the role of IFC. Why IFC decided to, learn and try to apply artificial intelligence and natural language processing for our ENS due diligence, and how we trained the model to be able to behave as a virtual ESG analyst and support our specialists. And then a forward-looking thing, an aspirational thing of what we think potentially application like this can have significant impacts on the human development goals. Oops, sorry. So IFC is the largest development finance institution that works with the private sector to realize development goals on emerging markets, as we call. This is a coin term for the institution when we refer to developing countries. And IFC was created on the idea that the private sector has the potential to really speed up and transform emerging markets economies and deliver sustainability to those countries. So IFC works approximately in 100 different countries. We have, in the ESG space, our department has approximately 200 members between staff and consultants working daily on evaluating projects and monitoring our portfolio. And the idea is that we need to conduct assessments, ESG due diligence, to ensure that the project that we are financing through these private institutions do not harm the local communities or impact the environment significantly. So our responsibility is that we need to be environmentally and socially responsible of our investments. These are very challenging markets. These are very difficult environments. These are where, sustainability is at stake. But the rewards in terms of developing are so much interesting, and so the potential is so much important. And so IFC has developed a set of policies, the different ways, and they were talking yesterday about the different reference and standards. These are called the performance standards on environmental and social sustainability. These are 8 different policies that covers management of ENS risk, labor and working conditions, pollution, community health and safety, land issues, biodiversity, and indigenous peoples and cultural heritage. So when we say, and then we have the corporate governance framework. That's not my area of expertise, but we have like 5 different dimensions in terms of, transparency, control environment, minus shareholders management, and things like that are also part of the scope. I tend to talk always about ENS because that's where I come from, but the corporate governance is also another framework that is within our ESG due diligence. So this framework, the IST performance standards, is what has been adopted so far by 140 other bank and financial institutions around the world on what is called the Equator Principles Group. So these institutions decided that they will assess on a consistent way and align with the IFC policies when they do investments in emerging markets. So IFC has been doing this for almost more than 20 years. The policies as such were approved in 2006 and have been reviewed in 2012. But even with the amount of expertise, this seems always to be an ever-escaping target, being able to deal with that. And this is because we are moving more and more in more difficult environments and more challenging situations, and especially working, in Africa and Asia or even in Latin America, where there are shaking political situations, very difficult social conditions. And so, and the other important thing that's happening is that the expectations of our stakeholders keep on evolving and being more demanding. So things like they want more and more meaningful engagement with stakeholders, with the communities, with the ones that potentially impacted. They want us to ensure occupational health and safety conditions for the workers. They want us to go at things that, we didn't have like 25 years ago or 30 years, so be more specific on gender issues and disparities on gender rights. They want us to, do human rights and so on and so forth. And this keeps evolving, and it's an agenda that is very variable, and we need to be ready. But, it's a lot to encompass and a lot to put in our backpack when we go and assess these projects in very difficult situations. So that's why we, at some point, we said, okay, the portfolio of IFC keeps on growing. Currently, it's like 2,000 projects. But the expectations that we do more to be more impactful and to reach to more communities and more countries in need. So it comes to a point where, it's not by adding bodies that you can manage this. And it's becoming more difficult, and especially when you have big group of people, issues of consistency in the way you run those due diligence becoming more and more difficult, okay? And there, these situations of potentially double standards or inconsistency in the way we apply our policies. And, because of this is kind of a public institution and has responsibilities to the stakeholders, there's close scrutiny on the project that we do, and there are many NGOs out there that, they have their contribution to ensure that we really deliver on our promises. So we decided that we need to work or apply artificial intelligence and natural language processing to support the work of our specialists. And so Malena stands for the Machine Learning ESG Analyst, and is a virtual assistant that basically processes large amounts of data, basically unstructured data, namely documents, and in that way analyze the content and provide useful intel for whoever has to run a due diligence. So as I said, it runs on natural language processing, and particularly using sentiment analysis to provide some information about those documents. So the starting point, as I heard many times during these days, is to creating an expert-based glossary, okay? And so we basically went to our experts and asked them, what are the concepts, what are the ideas, what are the things that you look when you're running your ESG diligence? What is the principal aspects in environment and social and corporate governance? And we collected that, and a glossary does 4,500 concepts. And they are very specific in that sense to ENS due diligence. So we don't look at, and I'll explain, especially when talking about the next slide, which is the taxonomy, we are trying to constrain the concepts to things that are related to the kind of questions that either one of our specialists, but also potential corporate investors will ask to be sure that there's a good management of ESG risk, or what are the outstanding issues that they need to pay attention to. So we organized this taxonomy, and basically we partner with Pool Party and Semantic company to do that. And so we are using Pool Party for this. It's been very instrumental for our work. And we organize along 10 different main or broader concepts. And how we organize this, basically, this is taxonomy is a very intuitive, expert-based way of organizing content, but you need to define the logic that help your way of thinking and doing that. And that's challenging. And when you see a lot of people around the table, there are many ways to skin a cat. But we found out that in our case, it was important to think about what is this about? And this is basically about environmental, social, corporate governance issues and the many other aspects of it. When do we want to look at this? And this is basically on doing business activities, and particularly when we talk about sustainable finance, which is our area of interest. Then who are the actors in this space? And so we have on one side the users. I mean, basically personas like I'm a biodiversity specialist, or I'm an occupational health and safety officer, or I'm a corporate governance officer. So how these roles bring different kind of interests and aspects that need to be addressed by the taxonomy. And then finally, how these are managed or tackled. And it's basically risk management system components, so management programs, procedures, technology for controlling pollution, etc. And what are the frameworks that guide those actions, like the ESG standards? So based on that, we organized the taxonomy. And then the next thing was how we're going to apply sentiment analysis. And the idea was that using positive, negative, and neutral instead of agree or disagree or like or dislike, we assume that the sentence that contains one of those key concepts has a message that says something positive or negative or neutral about that risk. And so to do that, we lined up a team of 6 ESG analysts that started labeling manually to train the model, and we are very convinced that the interaction between humans and models and algorithms is the most powerful way to go about, at least in our experience of that. And so they label over 1.5 years 155 sentences that were used to train the model. And in that sense, the model is capable of reading sentences where any of those 4,500 concepts are embedded, and then decide whether the message in that sentence is positive, negative, neutral. This is an important thing in terms of training, because when we use the standard model, and I'm not an IT person or in the I space, I'm much more a kind of practitioner using this. The model that was used is Roberta. Roberta basically assigned a sentiment based on the connotation of the term. So if the sentence says something like, there is no evidence of child labor for this project, Roberta read child labor and said this is a negative sentiment. Now, with the trained model, we've been able to educate the algorithm so they identify when say no evidence of child labor, that's a positive remark. And so that has been an interesting experience in comparison what standard model and a human trained model can do. And then we add additional dimensions. One of the things that the users were saying is, okay, this is a problem now. This is an issue now. Is there any indication that this may get better or worse in the future? And so we added what we call outlook labels. And from the investment point of view, that means opportunities. If you know there's a problem now, but probably in 6 months or 8 months, this will be overcome, that would bring a potential investment opportunity. And the other thing was adding another layer of labeling, which is related to severity. So not all the sentences bring the same level of risk. Some are worse than others, and we have a scale from low, medium, critical, and high to provide even more information when analyzing documents. So I don't want to go too much details, but then you can look on the documents that are in the system and actually read where positive, negative, or neutral content is. And then Malena presents the information on different charts and kind of a dashboard. And so this is a snapshot at some point of IFC portfolio. The chart on the left shows a time dimension of how different kind of aspects of ESG have been triggered over the time in our portfolio. Okay, this is a very 10,000 meter view. I mean, doesn't provide too much detail, but it's interesting to see how over time things change. As I was saying, the expectation of stakeholders, or where people is interested on concern about different aspects. And on the right-hand side, we have something that called topics. So topics are defined as a set of connected concepts. And so on top of the issues are kind of climate issues, occupational health and safety issues, security force impacts, so forth. So it gives you kind of an order of priority. The next one is about creating profiles of prospecting companies where you want to invest. And so gathering information about those companies allow us to show, this is information about a company being some years with IFC. And so you look at different trends. And we also provide this word cloud where I think visually you can identify what are the issues currently with this company, okay? And if you're potential investors, these are, if you have the chance, these are the questions you want to ask to the project. Okay, so how are you dealing with impact to water? That seems to be, an outstanding issue, etc. So from the ESG due diligence point of view, it gives you priorities and give you insights, and you avoid the bias of individuals that they have their pet topics in. And my biodiversity, especially, I want to go full in on biodiversity, but I may be missing other things. And you can go up to the documents that provide the evidence for those trends. And that was something that people want. So many companies provide scores and then good scores and bad scores, but you cannot go up to the sources to really make a sense or make your own judgment. Maybe there's something about impacts to water, but when you go to reading the documentation, it's not that bad, or it's not an issue that you're particularly concerned about. So it gives you the chance to go up to zoom in and go up to the documents that contain that information. And also showing trends over time. AMR is an annual monitoring review. It's a document that our clients provide every year on their performance. And you can see that some aspects are becoming more prominent one year, and then as they are addressed, they become less prominent. So, and then other things pop up as the next thing to tackle. The milestones, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but we acquired 92% model accuracy with the FI1 score. Don't ask me about the details because I'm not very strong on that. But the interesting thing is that, okay, but you still have an 8% that is not accurate. Well, the interesting thing is when we check the accuracy between the 6 analysts, it's not that different from the accuracy for the model. So I would say that the model is behaving like a human, okay? So you put 6 people to label something as positive, negative, neutral, and you have a level of accuracy that is around 90%. The other thing is the speed at which is done by the machine is like 600 pages per minute. You can imagine it can process in no time and provide all these analytics and charts. And then the aspirational thing. So this is an important tool that's helping us to, be more effective and more thorough on running ESG due diligences. But the Sustainable Development Goals, according to the United Nations, may require up to $5 trillion to be fulfilled. Okay, IFC provided last year 46 billion, so we are very shy of what is needed to really move significant the needle to the Human Development Goals and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, our ambition, and I think it's the same ambition of Andreas and Prasad and many others are working in this space, is that at some point there will be a breakthrough that reduces the uncertainty on ESG issues in those developing countries where there's lack of information and lack of consistency of things. And by that, allowing corporate investors to go for big rewards out there in those countries together with a high risk, with additional confidence. And if you can even drift 2.5% of the total global asset, which is 200 trillions, we could make a huge difference in terms of human development goals. So that's the ambition, that we can reduce risk, reduce uncertainty, and then trigger more investments on those emerging economies. Malena has been recognized for the second time by the International Research Center on Artificial Intelligence, that is under the auspice of UNESCO, as the top 100 outstanding project. But this particular year, we were bumped to the number among the 10 most promising projects. So we are hopeful, and this kind of encourages us to keep on this space and possibly collaborate with our colleagues, whether we possibly do a breakthrough and make those sustainable goals materialize sooner than later. So we talk about IFC, its role. We talk about why we use artificial intelligence and natural language processing and how we apply sentiment analysis, how we train Malena, this interaction between humans and machine that has been very positive. And then, our aspiration that at some point this could be a breakthrough and, realize the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much.
Can literally see that there are so many questions out there.
First of all, thank you very much. We work on similar topic at the University of Milano Bicocca, trying to look at the text regarding companies, assess ESG factors, and so on. And this seems a great work that we would like also to use and incorporate in what we do. My question is regarding the kind of document that you analyze, because of course it's very different if you look at DNF or news about the company or other kind of communication. And I think another issue here is greenwashing. A lot of companies are putting a lot of positive material, but of course you need to be able to balance it.
Yeah, so we basically have I think something like 240,000 documents that are the corpora of Malena, which is not really big data. I mean, 240,000. It keeps on growing, but we're trying to curate content in the application to avoid, this kind of things. Now, we have different kind of sources. Of course, it's the bulk of what IFC has produced over the 20 years, in combination, as Prasad mentioned yesterday, with the obtaining documentation from Factiva, which is part of the Dow Jones. We were talking with Prasad that people associate Factiva with news, but it's so much more than news. They basically collect everything that is published, and it's a very powerful source of information. So we have developed over time some queries to get exactly the kind of documentation that we want. Now, we also look at corporate annual reports or sustainability reports produced by companies. They normally present a very rosy thing, but sometimes it's the only thing you have. And it can give you some understanding of the capacity of the company, especially if the information is material. So some people say some rosy things, some people say material things about the way they manage risk. So yeah, it's a difficult thing, but we are trying to err on being very conservative and not put everything under the sun.
Cool, thanks.
Oh, more questions here. Hassad.
You mentioned annual reports for the companies. Are these by any chance the SEC submissions of the companies?
No, what I mentioned in my slide is the 2,000 companies that are clients of IFC on a yearly basis. They need to send, not exactly all of them, but most of them need to send an annual report answering a set of questions about their performance in that year. And we use this as a basis to monitor the portfolio.
And they are making these documents specific to your request, or
yes,
are they?
yes,
okay.
yes.
Nice presentation.
Thank you.
I was interested, a lot of this will contribute to the efficiency of reporting, but did you also discover some new insights, like something that was not known beforehand? But because of this more structured way of working, some new insights came to somehow surface.
I think one of the things that we are seeing is that this is a much more thorough analysis because, the way the data is sliced and organized and, ranked in terms of potential risks is much thorough than what an individual can do by itself. Now, we're starting to work on, putting on the current taxonomy some ontology rules, and on working on that, we're starting to see some connections that were not sometimes evident. For instance, I'll give you a silly example, but you potentially won't connect biodiversity issues with child labor, for instance, or you will potentially connect underage workers with some business activities. For example, a while ago, we ran an analysis on and using the application on telecoms, okay? And telecoms are, by definition, not having such a big ENS impact. But we learned that there were some projects in India where kids were selling the cars that are used for mobile phones, okay? So there was a link between child labor and telecoms that we were not expecting. So sometimes there are these things that, because you have this kind of mindset that, telecoms, not a big deal, okay? We like to look at oil and gas. Well, oil and gas barely has any link to child labor, but we were not expecting to find child labor in telecoms. So there are these kind of things as we use this, it's making us more smarter, making us smarter.
Yeah. Very great example. Yeah.
So how many people are using your software at this point?
Well, as I said, we have this group of 200 users. I forgot to mention that we also had a partnership with Amundi. Amundi is probably the biggest or the largest corporate investors in Europe, and they are based in France. And to test this, because at some point we have this idea that potentially this may serve others. And so the experience was very helpful because they got information about like 800 projects that they have. And when we run this on our system, the assessment come very, very close to the assessment that the Amundi team does on that portfolio.
Great.
Yeah.
So thank you very much and good luck on the future.
Right, Teams?
Yeah. Teams, you need to.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So let me introduce our last speaker of this morning session here. While they're setting up the infrastructure, Rafat Yalamanchi is CEO of Semantics. So he's also from the eastern part of the United States. In this role, he's also lead developer of TextDistill, which I think was mentioned quite some time already yesterday also. A tool to distill knowledge from language. TextDistill successfully harnesses large language models and semantic technologies to harvest highly accurate knowledge from language. Fasad's prime interests are language and knowledge, two sides of a coin, as he says. Welcome, Fasad, and stage is yours.
Well, thank you so very much, Yuta. Carlos is here. Carlos, thank you so much. It was a great talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, I understood quite a bit about the context in which ESG is kind of really played out. And it looks like it's a problem that is definitely getting a lot of attention and things like that. And technologists with almost no knowledge of ESG are getting swayed into looking at this problem. It's all around. I'll start off by introducing my topic, ESG data extraction from global news. Carlos mentioned Factiva, that's one of the sources of global news that we work with. And ESG is not new to this audience for sure. Environment and social governance is like taking on real prominence these days because there is undeniable correlation between climate calamities and economic damage, and that has given rise to interest from the communities and governments and regulators and so on, and clearly businesses have taken interest in this space, and along with the businesses, the investors have are finding way into finding these opportunities, and again governments and regulators are kind of insisting that the investors and investment firms declare or kind of disclose what their ESG performances are. And as was mentioned earlier, some of the problems with companies themselves expected to declare what their ESG performance was, that it was leading to greenwashing, which is like claiming big things which probably could not be verified in any way. But nonetheless, they tend to get a good picture into the public, and as such, are misleading the public. And as such, more recently in the last few years, there is this interest in focusing on alternate data, so to speak. Not the traditional data where it comes through regular channels and through the government sources or whatever the regular submissions and so on. Instead, these alternate data that consists of public sources like social media, which have nothing to do with the companies involved in that. In that sense, they tend to be a little more objective, much more objective than is possible. And news happens to be one of those big sources, and hence our focus on news as one of the channels to get this ESG related data. And we have integrated with Factiva Global News to do that, and that sets the stage for the topic, the technology side of extracting ESG related constructs and concepts and all the information, the factual knowledge out of this flowing news that comes through this aggregation service. With that, I will get into my presentation. TextDistill is the technology that we are discussing. TextDistill, as the name suggests, it distills, as Uta mentioned, it distills knowledge in text and language. And when you say knowledge, knowledge is more than just entities, and sentiment is clearly one of them. But it's much more the relationships among the concepts that you run into, and it tends to be orders of magnitude more complicated than just extracting entities, for example. So that's one of the challenges that we tend to focus here. Okay. I'll go on to the next slide. So that brings the focus onto text. Why is text so challenging, and what may be interesting simultaneously with text? Text, unlike other sources of data, carries knowledge. For example, the other source of data might be like relational databases, spreadsheets, and what have you, right? And so they are, carrying information, but not necessarily the full knowledge. I mean, there needs to be some kind of a shepherding by human element of some sort. Maybe it is another application on top of, ingesting data from a relational database, applying the metadata, and then, finally producing the knowledge that ends up, meaning something. So in its essence, the entire knowledge is encapsulated in a narrative text. The narration itself gives the authority of what the meaning is behind the concept that you run into and what the relationships that are kind of, are revealed in the rolling text. So that is the context of text itself. And so, and it's richer in that sense that it has all the information necessary to extract the necessary knowledge. And so, but up until now, without the technology support of, what has been happening in the last several years, it has been extremely difficult because it is very nebulous to kind of get at these things, especially these relationships and so on. And news, the other side of this news is that it is timely and it is actionable also. Like the example that I have here on the right-hand side is an article, snippet of an article from MIT Technology Review. At the time it came out, it's talking about the batteries for electronic vehicles. There is an innovation that is, put forward by this company, QuantumScape, and the innovation itself is that the liquids in these batteries was being replaced by a solid state, and the benefits of this innovation are that the key elements of what you expect in an electronic vehicle is the range of the vehicle, and then safety. Liquids were prone to be a lot more hazardous, and so solid state was a lot more safer. And so both prominent parameters were being addressed in this innovation. And as such, it was a pretty serious news item. If you were to capture the news item and then picked it up for all the knowledge it carried, it could have been actionable to folks that really knew what to do with it. Whereas without the technology of extracting knowledge from sources like this, you would have to wait for the normal channels to kick in, which is like your quarterly reports of companies involved and things like that. Who knows what type of distortions get into, and the fidelity of the sources and all of that stuff. And hence the importance of text is, I cannot underscore the value of it, especially if you know the source of where it's coming from. So the documents that Carlos, you're mentioning, they really carry a lot of authority, and so you need to preserve all of that, and then all the way without any obfuscation along the way, lead it up to your final intelligence that you are going to depend on. That's possible. Now, today with the technology like the LLMs and the knowledge graphs, knowledge graph technology has been around. Semantic technology has been in the academia for so long. It has matured and it is pretty rigorous. All of that is there. Now, together with these LLMs, it's very interesting. The combination is what really powers extracting highly accurate knowledge from these, textual, assets, as well as, as I intend to show you in a demo, querying these documents as such, And text distill, the actual software itself is a pipeline software. It takes in on one side the text documents. There could be sources from the web, internal corpuses, and I have some examples on the left-hand side. Given in the ESG space, for example, news, newsletters, social media, data, private, public, fund prospectuses, for example, you name it. Anything in written text, as long as there is a context, emails are game, so on and so forth. As long as there is human readable content that humans would have made some sense out of it, we can make this system to produce some value out of it, automatically. And that, being that it is able to do that automatically, you get this unique opportunity to cover the, the scope, the volumes of this text that is getting published, day in, day out. And the interesting thing is that you feed in these texts on one side, it produces completely structured knowledge graph or graph, in RDF triples. Those in this conference you all would know. RDF graphs are these knowledge graphs. The constructs are rooted in standards. And so clearly all that unstructured data is now available in highly structured, queryable, knowledge graph. And so the standard query languages like Sparkle can directly get all the information that is extracted from these documents. And so what we have is, as part of text distill, this, very interesting use case, which is, knowledge graph search. For example, as you can see, it literally has a text input bar where you enter natural language query, and then that gets translated and posted back into the knowledge graph, and then you get the results, And of all the results, and we are looking at anatomy of one of those results. For example, item number 3, third result, it is producing this related to Nestle climate claims through its partnerships. It is talking about how Nestle has some kind of a relationship with coals, and then one of the divisions of Nestle is they are claiming carbon neutrality by 2025, and so that is an answer that was produced. The answer itself had come from multiple documents, so a single document did not have the answer for the question that you asked, and so the answer had to be put together from bits and pieces of text that are there in the corpus. And so it so happens it is 2 documents in this case, and so the 2 documents that have produced the answers are listed down below the answer itself, and with the title of the articles. And so, and the other thing is that you can double click on that item to verify if the answer indeed is coming from the claimed underlying documents. And then it kind of leads you into the exact snippets of it, and I'll have a chance to showcase that as well. So it is giving you that complex answers to verifiable answers to complex questions. In that sense, you are able to interrogate the text corpus, literally. So highly unstructured documents are now going to participate in your real answers that you're looking for, literally at your fingertips. That's the idea. And then there is another aspect of this tooling. We have this live alert system, which is not fully finalized and not delivered yet. It is in mid stage of development. But the idea is that the corpus is able to pick up on the signals that you have configured against the corpus, and the signals could be these complex questions that you are posing, and these are at a frequency that you configured. They are applied, these queries, against the corpus, and then if something kind of meets the criteria, that gets bubbled up as an alert and published. And then it so happens, as we saw, I mean, in cases where the answer had to be coming from multiple documents, and maybe only one document is already there in the corpus, but the second document hasn't had a chance to make it to the corpus yet. So it is like in an intermediate state, that alert itself. But whereas the new document, maybe it is in tomorrow's news, and so tomorrow's news article, when it hits the corpus, and the configured alert gets triggered, the query gets triggered, and then now it sees that, okay, this part of the piece of information is now sufficient to complete the entire alert, and it qualifies it to be published. And so in that sense, it kind of literally connects back to your history. For cases like fraud and things like that, this is literally invaluable. So for hidden documents and all that can participate in your queries that you come up with. So this is one of those things that I know our clients have been asking for. And with that, so I want to kind of take a few minutes to show you the actual demo. We are hosting this text distill at the site textdistill.ai. And before I jump on, and maybe on this slide, because we may not have a chance to get here, we are headquartered in North Carolina in US on the East Coast. And these are our contacts. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, and then we can take it there. I will get to the demo. I'm just clicking on this. So we are on textdistill.ai, logging in through this public logins. So it puts us into this knowledge search interface. Before we get into the search, I would like to just show you what the corpus is. So the whole idea of this text distill pipeline is that you feed in the documents, and the documents gets processed through text distill. And so as part of the results of processing, what you are getting is the knowledge extracted, and the knowledge itself is like RDF triples, as I mentioned earlier. And so let's see, what such a thing is. And for the sake of the demo, we loaded about 158 some odd documents. These are all global Dow Jones news articles. And I'll click on that corpus, and we can see what these documents look like. So these are all the documents, and this is an interface to kind of, give you a handle on, what the documents are. And I can click and show you what document is. So you can see this is a typical news article, running text. So it might make sense for a human, but for software, it kind of, is a little difficult, click on, so just to give you a sense of these articles. So these are, day in, day out, these articles come in. And what does the knowledge, extracted knowledge look like? I just picked up 4 documents here. And if I click on this interface here, it will show you the knowledge extracted, and that is, stored, populated into an RDF knowledge graph at the back end. This is we are just looking at the underlying knowledge graph for these 4 documents, because we selected these 4 documents. These 4 documents, they have been broken down into 157 text blocks. And these are all the various concepts that have been extracted. And of course, this is a little bit messy, and it is, it's not meant to be readable. It is for you to kind of, hone in on specific areas of the graph if you're interested in. And there are many tools, support, interactions that will let you focus in on specific things. On the right-hand side, I don't intend to go through these things. This is for engineers, when they're trying to configure the underlying ontology and the taxonomy that is being applied to extract specific aspects of it. And if they are, suspicious that they are not picking up on certain concepts, then they can come in and visually see and inspect and see if the predicates are coming up properly or if the entities are characterized correctly. And, because there are plenty of thresholds, the machine learning models have a lot of thresholds that are getting applied. And so at times you may have to tweak these thresholds for something to be classified differently and, things like that. So engineers, this is the great debugger interface. In fact, our engineers specific on project, they spend quite a bit of time here looking at single, article at a time, multiple articles, multiple documents, and seeing, are the concepts getting picked up right, are the predicates getting picked up right, and, on and on. So you can clear various things. And so there are many tooling here. So similarly, edge labels and, things like that, you can do that. So, but the focus what will be meaningful is, to show you the search interface here that, so this is on one side, the entire knowledge graph that is accessible. I go back, right? This is the corpus. I go into the search, and search puts me in this, knowledge search interface. I go to open search. There are multiple things. I'll get to the signals in a little bit. And here I will select the ESG, corpus, and you are presented with this open text, text field where we can, like for example, who is working for which company, So this is, some question that you are asking the corpus, and hit enter, and boom, you get the answers here, So, and you can look at these things. Now you can double click and go to the underlying, the actual, the answer that you selected, for example, here, and where is the substantiation for the answer that got picked up, and you can actually navigate to the source text blocks here and kind of read through this and see that, okay, this answer is indeed, what would have made sense for you for the question that you posed, which is like, is this person working for, in this case, we are asking a simple question: who is working for which company? So there must be a person, there must be a company or an organization. And so is the underlying source text, does that have it? And so you can verify that it is there. You can read through that if you are able to. And the other thing is, you can follow the text, or, if you're a little more curious and you're visually inclined, you can actually see the graph view as well. It just brings that portion of the graph that actually answered the question. And so with the concepts, again, you can bring up the node labels and edge labels, and I can move it around so that it is a lot more visible. Oops. Hope it is making sense. Yeah, and I can click on these things. These are nodes, that kind of lead you back into the actual underlying text itself. And I'll just go and do maybe a little more if I'm able to type. Let's say which company has invested in another company, let's say, right? Right, I'm asking a general free-form question here. And if there are any such things that are there, you will see these are the answers that are here. Like, for example, Barclays is making some 1.2 billion in this investment, and Barclays is, and you can, click through, any of these things and see, is that really the case? Double click and, go here. So here, Quanta Services doing some $2.7 billion, investment. So this is, as you can see, it literally takes you to the underlying text. And this could have been, a corpus of million documents, and your question could have been much more complicated than just single proposition or multi-proposition. I'll show you. Of course, I can't type correctly a long propositional question. And the same thing, by the way, you can see the graph view as well. But what I intend to show you is the other concept of what we call signals. The signals are same thing as these free-form queries. But once that you have played with these queries and you have satisfied yourself that this is the exact query that you want, and so you kind of have a chance to play with it, like try different queries, in complicated queries at that, because a typical analysis that really produces some value are generally complicated and multi-propositional. It is multi-hop in that sense. So I will bring up, and then here what we have an opportunity is you create that query and give it a name. And we call that a signal. And so that you don't have to retype that entire, query each time. You just call it by a signal name, and then, you just boom, it kind of, applies that big long query. And I would like to do that here. So for ESG, we have under signals, there is one signal that we set up for our demo, and this happened to be popular with the analysts, investment analysts. And this one is talking about organization A is investing in or has a business arrangement with the organization B or C, and so on. And these organizations B, C are reporting on some kind of a green variable or a climate variable. And these climate variables have certain measure. And then, they are reporting all this by a certain period. So, as you can see, it's a 4 or 5 propositional query. So typically these are like pretty complicated queries underneath. And so with a signal, you can, because you don't want to give in values for all these variables, you anchor it with, 1 or 2 of the entities. And in this case, we anchored it with an organization, which happens to be the organization A. So, and the system automatically detects all the organizations in the corpus and it presents it to you for selection. And I think I have Barclays, I have seen that. For example, I gave Barclays is this big bank, and and that is now inserted into that signal as organization A, and now we are looking for rest of the query. Is there anything in this corpus that fits this signal that you're looking for? And it turns out, we are only showing you, top 10, and there are quite a few of these things, that will come up, maybe 20 of these. And you can go into any one of these and, you can see the top one, for example, Barclays is investing 2.2 billion in business arrangement with Chevron. And Chevron is aiming to eliminate, routine gas flaring, a significant source of emissions by 2030. And, as you can see, by 50% the reduction from 2016 and so on. And so you can see that it fits the signal that you're looking for. And what it is telling you is that it is coming from these 2 documents. There is one document with this title, Dirty Deals between UK banks and, whatever. The other one is Democrats press, with GOP attacks and Biden policies and so on. So now we want to verify, is it really coming from these 2 documents and, where exactly this, source of truth is within those 2 documents. I can double click, and it takes you here, with the underlying the same answer with the, the sources here this time. So you can click on these things and, see, follow, what it is. So instead of having to read through the entire document, you are now, at least supported by, having to read just this, few sentences or maybe a sentence. And you can verify that that's what is the case, so click around and just, different portions of the answer are now verified with these things. And again, the same thing, you can go to the graph view and then get the same thing. So again, this graph was part of the underlying knowledge graph, and it's only picking up the subgraph that fit the answer that you're looking for. So you could not do this subsection or subsetting of what needs to be promoted as an answer without having the underlying knowledge graph. So, and hence the text digital processing, applying all the technology and all that really comes in handy to kind of, help you get here. So I can bring up the node labels and edge labels, and, you can follow through these things. And, so I'm not going into the details, even, you're able to follow, right? And you can follow the predicates and, something says, like we said, $2.2 billion is invested. And so the investor is, investee is the Chevron, and Barclays is the investor. So once you get to know, what this, how to read these predicates on the edges, then it's immediately apparent for you. Well, with that, I would like to stop here because, primary idea was to kind of, really give you a sense that there is a working system that really gets in between lines of, running text and brings out facts and concepts and all of that are driven by an ontology at the back end. In that sense, this system can be applied to different domains. Again, you just need the ontology of the domain to drive the system. That's the problem. Yeah.
So thank you, Prasad.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the nice work. So I understand the part about entity linking. Can you elaborate a bit more about relation extraction? So which kind of, I guess you have a dictionary of relations and you focus on them?
Right. Yeah. At least, because we have an ontology at the back end that gives us a guiding, rationale for what constitutes an allowed relationship between entities. And it doesn't give you an exact, latch to kind of pull up because the words may not match. Our predicates, is investor here, but there is no investor in the text if you were to look at it. So again, we have to kind of, match them by our machine learning and all of that in the middle.
So it's basically you have a machine learning that learn a set number of relationship
on the fly.
On the fly, and then you try to extract this relationship.
Exactly, and the ontology kind of gives you the guiding post so that you are within the scope of this particular predicate, which is an investor in this case. And here it may be saying that somebody has provided money. In this context, provided kind of suits to be matched up with investor. In this context, only in this sentence. Elsewhere, it provided maybe something else.
Does it mean that you need then some gold standard or some example for each relation that you're extracting?
Yeah, there is definitely some training that we do, and there is a lot of synthetic data that we generate for training based on an ontology, just for training purposes.
Okay, I understand.
And we use verb nets, and there are a lot of resources are there, so that kind of allows for, because now we are in the realm of pure language. Yeah, and there is plenty of resources that we can corral to, because now the context is set together, so we really can aim for whatever the accuracies that you're looking for.
Great talk.
Thank you.
And I see you use a lot of standards, like the ontologies and the graphs, but you also derive very valuable insights. And is there also some way in which you could expose those insights using open standards as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the knowledge graph is in completely standardized, W3C RDF. right? And so we actually publish in LinkedIn, I mean, JSON LD, you know, so, I mean, it depends on the client, you know, if they want to really publish the, you know, the outcome.
Because could you expand a bit on that? Like, is that like maybe a feed that you can have a subscription to? Because this is very valuable information.
Yeah, but
because you generate those insights.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you know, we are a technology group, you know, so you know, we do ESG in one area, and we have done, you know, crime in another place, you know, so we are not wedded to these application areas. The clients themselves own the data pretty much, you know, and so it's up to them. But the technology is there. We publish, you know, JSON LD, which is kind of, you know, you can literally convert this into a federatable knowledge graph that you can really apply Sparkle and some another source, and then that can link to this source and plug these two things to produce a nice BI chart for you. But the data has to be, you know, approved by the client.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks.
So any more questions? Well, thank you very much. Actually, I'm into knowledge, very much into knowledge. So I really appreciate you understanding that there is knowledge and that is more than just data.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for that talk. And with this, we are closing the session. I know there is one coming up in Iphigenia in 10 minutes. So there's another hour to go before there's lunch. So thank you very much for joining us here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, hi, how are you doing? Hi, do you know me or not yet? But